exactly what the website is, and I'll be happy to try it.
Association for Individual Development. And across the top, you'll look for the Family Council tab.
Right, and I do remember that tab.
And then you just scroll down on that page.
It didn't work last month, but I'm happy to try it again this month. Okay.
But you can stay on the phone. I mean, like we won't lose you.
Okay.
Okay.
Get me in my car, so I don't want to hold you up.
Well, yeah, you're fine. Just, I mean, you can stay where you're at as well if you want. If you're comfortable with that, and we can try it. Sometime you and I, on the phone,
Yeah.
getting into it. So is that okay? Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. All right. Welcome everyone. I want to tell you two things that I put into the chat that I hope work. I'm not sure this first one did, but I will copy and paste it there. Two different things that we have been talking about here are kicked off or being kicked off. One is the parent and guardian engagement page, or the page, parent and guardian engagement page, within our website. If you go to the first link, aidcares.org /page, and click on that, then you should get the ability, and I can show it here on the screen. So, whoops, that's not it. Where'd it go? There we go. So then you get this page that then has a password, and the password is star, all lowercase. Well, that's what, oh, star is a plural, STARS. And then it will take you into information about all the different things that are happening around AID. So we have downloads that are the Community Day Services contacts, and all the information there. Here's like different events that are going on and pictures of things that are happening. There's the DD residential contacts list. There's the program support team information, and all kinds of things that have been happening across AID that you can click on and read more about, see all the pictures and what is happening. So that was a request. I'm going to stop sharing. That everybody wanted access to. So we're excited that that is out and going. So again, in the chat is the link to aidcares.org /page. That's parent and guardian engagement. PAGE, and the password is all lowercase STARS, or stars. Then the second link that I put in there is a Survey Monkey address to sign up for text messages via AID, and that would be, you know, for specific locations, like specific homes or CDS locations, so that if we have a closure or need to have some kind of information communicated quickly to a group of people that are interested and have loved ones there, you will receive those texts that you sign up for. So again, the link is in the chat, and you can click on that and be able to sign up for AID texts. I know that some people have already signed up right about now. We have about 30 people signed up, and the link is going to stay open and available for quite a while in order to ensure that people have access to click to be able to get the information from text. All right, so that's exciting. It may take us a minute, but we eventually get there and keep trying to move forward. The other thing that I think we want to do before we introduce Andrea and have her get started is that Jim went this week to the Ligas Court hearing that was happening today or this week around the Ligas consent decree. So I will kick it over to him to be able to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so all of you know that our kids are, our adult kids are part of the Ligos class action lawsuit that was brought against the state almost 20 years ago. It was settled in 2011, so it's been underway for 13 years. The state has now made a motion in court to end the decree. They say they've accomplished all of its goals. So the hearing yesterday was in Chicago in the federal courtroom and Judge Coleman listened to both sides. The lawyers from the state, in my view, gave a lot of generalizations. They said, yeah, we've made improvements. We've added 10,000 people living in the community. Their names have been pulled from puns. We've, almost doubled the amount of funding that we have. All of that's true, but it doesn't tell the full story. And so it really went to the Ligos lawyers to tell the detailed story that just pulling people from puns doesn't do any good if they just go on another waiting list because there aren't provider agencies that are out there. So there's a lot of people who have had their names pulled who are unable to find services. A crisis for individuals who land in crisis and need stabilization. The state has processes on paper, but they're not working in practice because we haven't built capacity. The same with complex needs. Individuals, for example, like Maria, who's on our Zoom call tonight. So all of these details were pointed out by the lawyers on our side. There were so the motion was pretty strongly opposed by our folks. The judge raised the option of ending parts of the decree but leaving other parts intact. Our folks pushed back on that. So I guess we wait and see. What was really cool was the courtroom was full. Lots of us were wearing orange because it's National Disability Awareness Month, and that's the flag color for that month. Candace Goldstein, another AID parent who's often on this call, was there with me. So it was good to network with some people. And that's what happened yesterday. So the judge gave no timeline for when she would decide. She is still the court monitor, Ronnie Cohen, and the Ligos lawyers are still taking information from family members. So if you need to contact them, send me an email and I'm happy to get you in touch with them.
Thanks, Jim. And I tried to put some more. Oh, I need to put, after I get done, I'll put the chat. I put those links again in the website because if you, or in the chat, because if you weren't here when I initially typed that in, then you won't be able to see that chat. So I put those in again, and I'll put in what the access code to the page after I introduce Andrea Consolati, who is an Associate Vice President at AID, and she is coming to update us on the sexuality training and implementation. We talked about this last, I don't know, it's been maybe last year, maybe in the fall of last,
I think.
yeah. Yeah, so in the fall of last year, and this was state legislation that passed requiring some things to happen. So Andrea's gonna give a presentation. She's gonna share her screen. She has quite a bit of content to get through, so we're gonna hold questions for her. So until the end of her presentation, so she can get through all the content, because most likely what you're gonna ask is gonna be covered in the presentation somewhere. So we just wanted to update you on that. So I'll kick it over to Andrea, and I'm going to put myself on mute, and I'll put the password for the page in the chat as well.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see everybody here. I am not very good at sharing my presentation as far as the technology part, so please bear with me if I don't. We have a very long presentation, so I'm going to get started on that. It has a lot of information. This is something that we've been working super hard on for a couple years now to tailor it to our clients and think of every possible thing that we can possibly think of to make sure that we are considering all the different varying ability levels, people that might have trauma, just anything that we can think of to make this a good process and not something that would upset clients or families. So let me try sharing. Can you see my screen yet or no?
Yes.
Yes, we're good.
Okay. I'm going to put it in the player mode. Is that? Yes. Okay. You still can see it? I can't see your faces or anything, so please bear with me. So just wanting to let you know that me and Stephanie Norwood are the co-chairs for this committee. We have quite a few people on the committee. It's a popular committee because it's fun. So I'm asking if you could please hold your questions till the end of the presentation. If you want to grab a piece of paper or a pen to jot down your questions, I promise we will save time at the end to, and I will do my best to answer any question that you might have. So let me just start. The reason why we're doing this is because it's the law. So a couple of years back, they passed a law that said that we have to do this. It's probably something that's been much needed for a while, but now we are mandated to do so. So the law basically says that anyone with a developmental disability receiving services in our SILAs, ICFDD, day programs, should have access to sex education resources, and their treatment planning should support their needs to a right to sexual health. So the person will be assessed. There's two reasons why we're assessing somebody. The main reason is to screen to see what appropriate, developmentally appropriate materials we would need. You know, if a person doesn't have all of the skills, some of the materials are not appropriate for them. So we really want to make sure that, you know, we are understanding what level they're at so that we don't expose them to stuff that they have no clue about or don't need to know. Or if they do have a clue, we do need to expose them to the things that are going to keep them safe. The other part of it is to determine whether they have the capacity to give consent to sexual activity. And this is a little bit scary for guardians as well, just because a lot of people don't view their loved ones as, you know, being sexually active or even thinking about that. And some of the clients do not, but some of our clients do, and they actually do want to be sexually active. So this whole thing is about giving them the knowledge to make an informed decision, because otherwise they're just going to go based on what they know which might not be a lot. So it puts them a lot more at risk. So the assessments also consider the medical, psychological, psychosocial. So we do a whole background on, going through their files and looking for stuff, just to make sure that we have a well-rounded picture of the individual, not just that we just give this and see what comes out of it. We're really doing our research on that. And then a person's decision-making capacity to consent to sexual activity and the developmentally appropriate sex education materials are determined by the treatment team. So the guardian's decision shall be made in accordance with the court order. This is for the substantiated or substituted judgment. So I'll go over that a little bit more. Maybe if I hit enter. There we go. So according to the Illinois Department of Human Services, we need to address the following topics in the assessment. So we have to understand if they're interested in learning about sexual relationships. If they're not interested, they may not want to do this. We have to evaluate whether they understand the typical standards of adult relationships, whether they understand self-protection, their understanding about boundaries, whether they know what behaviors could be risky or harmful to themselves or others, ways to masturbate safely, and then about sexual identity. DHS also requires that the sex education include all of these things. They really focus on abstinence is the only way to ensure that you're not going to get pregnant or an STI, and just lots of really high focus on that. So it must be developmentally appropriate, present identity as a mature adult, replicate or incorporate evidence-based programs. So they tell us exactly what we can use to teach this. It has to place emphasis on the prevention of pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections. Stress that abstinence is the ensured method of avoiding pregnancy and STIs. We have to discuss the emotional and psychological consequences of sexual intercourse or unwanted pregnancy. We all know that there are some emotional and psychological consequences in relationships in general, so we have to discuss that. Stress that STIs are serious possible health hazards. So we have to let them know what could happen if you got that. Provide information on the effectiveness of condoms in preventing pregnancy and STIs. Teach individuals to avoid behavior that could be interpreted as unwanted sexual advances and how to reject unwanted sexual advances. So many people with disabilities are also preyed upon. So teaching them to recognize that and then how to handle it. And then explaining signs or potential dangers for predators. Some people prey upon this population, unfortunately. So we are going to the state has a whole list of curricula that we need to be using or we can use. Anything that's not recommended by the state or DHS, we would have to get permission to use, and it has to meet their criteria. So we're going to be using parts of probably all of the curricula, but the main ones we're going to be using are this Elevatus training and then a program called Flash. And this website here can kind of take you to the page. If you just go to Illinois DHS sex and you type that in, it'll bring up all of the things that you ever want to know about what we have to do. So, like I said before, this applies to CILA, ICILA, ICFDD, and CDS clients. The clients have the right to refuse to participate. So we are not going to make anybody that doesn't want to participate. How often will they be assessed? So we're going to at least try to assess everybody once to see where their knowledge is on this, just for screening, not even for consent, but just to see how much do they know and where are the gaps of where they might need some education. So let's see. Now, if an individual takes the assessment and they don't pass, right? And they really want to have sex, they can take it again after receiving the education just to see if they would be able to pass it and actually have the knowledge to make an informed decision. And then if there's a major change in functioning, like someone who used to be able to give sexual consent and now they've gotten dementia, we're going to reassess them. So any type of major medical or psychological change. So, hi, puppy. So there are two assessments. Right now, we're talking about assessment A, but we will be using two different assessments due to the varying ability levels of the individuals we serve. We have people who require 24-hour support and people that live alone. So there's a vast variability in functioning. So assessment A, in order to take this one, the person has to be able to either respond to the questions verbally or in writing. So individuals that are not able to communicate verbally will not be taking this one. Right now, it's already created. We piloted it with 8 clients, and the clients that we chose were clients that were already interested in having sex or already having sex. So they really wanted to take it. Then we did a group of 20 staff. We just trained them. So right now we focused on QIDP, case managers, directors, AVPs, and VPs. We haven't trained any of the DSPs yet to give this assessment. And many of them will probably be trained to do some of the education, but right now we're just focusing on the assessment part. And then after we got that group trained, we tested our first group of 20 clients. So those assessments just got completed at the end of July. And it was a really, really good process. Assessment B does not require the individual to be able to speak or write. It's and it's in the process of being created. It'll have the same content areas as assessment A, but less questions, and it'll be in a visual format. So it'll be either from 3 or 4 choices. I think we're going to be doing 4 choices, but we're still kind of playing around with the format of it. I just attached, there's a fact sheet that it's on the DHS sex web page for the Illinois Guardian and Advocacy Commission. It just kind of tells you what your rights as a guardian are in this. But essentially what it says is that a guardian needs to use substituted judgment to make decisions. So if you're making decisions on behalf of a person with a disability, you need to make them conforming as closely as possible with what the person with the disability would want done or intended under the circumstances. If they're competent of making those decisions, taking into account and evidence that includes but is not limited to the person's disability, the personal, philosophical, religious, moral beliefs, and ethical values relative to the decision being made. So if a person with a disability wishes, if we don't know what they are, they're unknown, and remain unknown after reasonable efforts to discern them, the decision would be made on the basis of the person with a disability's best interest. And that's determined by the guardian. So in determining someone's best interest, the guardian would weigh the reason for the nature of the proposed action, and then kind of factor in either the benefits and the risks and the other consequences with that. The next slide. So the guardian should include the individual as much as possible in all these decisions. and they should be based on what the individual wants, unless it's going to cause them harm. The law says that if an individual has enough consent capacity to say they want sex education, then they should be allowed to do so. So if you have a client that says, I want this education, and the guardian says no, if the client is able to advocate for what they want, the state is saying that they have the right to have access to the sex education. And vice versa, like if the client says, no, I don't want to do this, and the guardian says, oh, I really, really want them to do this, you need to make them do it. We can't make them do it. Guardians will be notified before the assessment that should be given, and have an opportunity to provide input. So before it's given, it's not going to be given without you being notified. The individual's team will hold a meeting prior to the consent determination. So even if your person is just being screened, you're going to be notified and asked for feedback or any type of information that would be helpful for the assessors to know. Now, if your person is being assessed for consent, you're going to actually meet with the team before they're assessed for that. So they're going to take the assessment, and then it's going to, before it goes to the Sexuality Rights and Advocacy Committee, you will meet as a team to determine any information that they're going to need to make that decision. So the determination will not be made without you having a meeting first.
I just want to point out really quickly that this PowerPoint, along with this recording of this presentation, will be up on the website tomorrow. So you'll be able to get to those links easily that Andrea has in here, and have the information in front of you, so you don't feel like you have to scribble furiously to write down everything she's saying. Go ahead,
Yes,
Andrea.
that's good. Thank you. I know I'm going fast. So I found this graphic, and this is something that I thought was great. So consent is ongoing. You can change your mind at any time. Just because you said yes one time does not mean it's, forever. We're teaching that it needs to be an enthusiastic yes. If it's not a yes, it's a no, right? Even if it's a maybe or I don't know, it's a no. Unless it's an enthusiastic yes, it's a no. It's freely given, so it's not like the person is being pressured or made to feel like they're afraid that they have to say yes. And this is what we're going to be talking about in the education. It's an informed decision. So we're not trying to lie or trick someone into consenting. And then it's very specific. Just because you agree to kissing does not mean you agree to every sexual act there is. Any new thing that a person wants to do, they need to get consent for. So I just thought that graphic was really nice. So for the requirements for the assessment, so all assessors have to take a 5.5-hour training and they have to pass it in order to become an assessor. And the assessments are always administered by 2 assessors. And that's for the client's protection and for the staff's protection, right? There's one person that's going to be reading all the questions, and then there's one person that's going to be the scribe or writing down what they say. We say that at least one of the assessors has to have a rapport with the client. We cannot put 2 strangers in a room to assess a client. They have to know at least one of the people, unless the client has said, I don't want to share that with people I know. I only want to talk to people that I don't know. And it must be conducted in a private space, as this is confidential. I mean, most of us would not want to talk about this topic in a large group. So the assessment tool, this is just a little visual, and I'm going to go through each one of these. But this is kind of how the assessment goes. So we get all the client information and we get all the background and the feedback. And then when we start with rapport questions. So we don't jump right into sex questions. We have an opening script and a consent form before we even ask any of the assessment questions. Then we go into the assessment and the scoring. And then at the end, we have a closing and a follow-up set of questions just to make sure the client, feels okay, if they have any questions, and then we have the post assessment, which is, filling out the summary and having it be reviewed by the different parties. So I'll go over each of these in more detail. So the pre-assessment prep, the assessors, they're going to reach out to the person's case manager to ask who needs to be notified about this, who would give us good feedback on this, of something we need to know. So it's definitely the guardian if they have one, but it could be a nurse, the behavior analyst, their person at day program, whoever is really important and really knows that person. We want to get any feedback that we can so that we have a better picture. And then they must complete a file review on the person's history. And then the client needs to be notified 24 hours at least in advance. This depends on the person, right? But we don't want to just spring it on them and not tell them about it. But some people tend to perseverate, so we may not want to tell them a week in advance, because then that's all they'll be talking about. Or some, would really like to have a week to know, it really depends on how the client best receives information, not what we want to do. So prior to starting the assessment, we have these rapport questions that kind of break the ice. They just talk about general things and they're not related to sexuality at all. And then we have an opening script, which we read aloud because we don't assume that everybody knows how to read. But it says what the assessment's about, what each assessor will be doing, about their confidentiality, about what they should do if they're uncomfortable, and how, if they disclosed abuse, we would handle it. And then they have to complete a consent form. So they, at this time, before we start the assessment questions, they are allowed to refuse to take the assessment, or they can, take it. Say they start it and they become uncomfortable, they can discontinue at any time. So, and we let them know that. You do not, or if they can't take it all in one time, we can do it more than, it's a lengthy assessment if you actually get through the whole thing. So, most of them that I've given have taken about an hour. So some clients are not able to sit that long. So I just wanted to show you, this is the rapport questions. It's, how are you doing today? What do you like to do for fun? What things make you happy? Where do you live? What do you like about AID? Just to get, and the clients, the ones that I've done, really like, just the extra attention in talking about these things. Some of them really reveal some really great things. I had one client that just said, like, he told me what his whole life goal was during this thing. I was like, that's so heartwarming. So then the script we read is, we will be asking some questions about relationships, safety, privacy, and sexuality. If you feel uncomfortable at any time, you can let us know and we will stop. If you know the answer to a question and you don't feel comfortable using the words, you can say pass, and we can come back to it later if you want. If you don't know an answer, it's okay to say, I don't know, or give it your best guess. One person will be asking the questions and another person will be writing or typing your answers. They will be writing down exactly what you say. We will not be showing this to anyone outside of our team without your permission. AID staff are mandatory reporters, so if you tell us about abuse of any kind, we have to report it. Are you okay with proceeding with this assessment? So that's the script. And then this is the consent form. So then we read this as well. So we tell them the topics that we're going to be discussing. Public and private, boundaries, self-protection, STIs, pregnancy, sexual consent, risks, laws, social media safety. And then we let them know that you can stop at any time. You can take a break when you need one, or you can pause and finish later. So then they can either say yes or no and sign. And then the bottom one is just if they started taking it and they chose to discontinue, we have them sign that as well. So that's the consent form. And this is probably the thing that is going to give parents a little bit of, will make you feel better. So the assessment consists of 7 sections. They're called indicators. But within each indicator, there's a varied amount of tiers. So the tiers have set criteria that must be met in order to advance to the next one. So say we have a topic, the first 5 questions are tier A. If they don't get enough of those right, we are not going on to tier B or tier C. Because if they don't get the select amount right, we are assuming that if they can't tell us public and private, then they're not going to be able to tell us public and private places to have sex. So it really does protect the person from being exposed to more information than they need or anything that's above their developmental level. So the indicators and tiers are in a specific order, and they increase with complexity and content detail. So some of the harder questions, they have to tell you why that is. And then the questions are scored by basically no knowledge, limited knowledge, or sufficient knowledge. So no knowledge means they have 0 clue on what we're asking. They haven't answered anything correctly. They don't answer. Limited knowledge is that they might have partially answered it, or they're kind of on the right track. It might be real basic. And then sufficient knowledge means that they know about the concept. They have a good knowledge about that. And we have criteria in each question for what are acceptable answers. So this is just, I wanted to show you that the visual of the indicator number 2, it says what it's about, and then there's a tier A. And then here is, I'm trying to point and you can't see that I'm pointing. They either got 4 out of 6 questions with at least limited knowledge, then they can proceed to tier B. Or if they've answered less than that, we're going to stop that indicator. We're done. So that just kind of gives you a visual of the tiers. And if they don't answer 4 out of 6, say they get 2, they're done with that section. So I just wanted to tell you what the indicators are. And we kind of went over this before, but the interest in learning about topics related to healthy adult sexual relationships, if they have no interest in learning about it or have no interest in having relationships, that's okay. They don't have to, and they don't have to take it. So the understanding boundaries, we have questions that cover personal space of other people, public versus private, general boundaries that sometimes some clients don't understand, either physical or non-physical, like, certain things you might not ask somebody or how close you get to someone. And then interpreting social cues from others. The self-protection, that covers stuff in relation to strangers. It also covers stuff about that they must have permission to touch you or another person, and no one can force you to do something you don't want to do. We talk about the concept of private parts, how to deflect unwanted advances, and understanding how to alert someone if you feel threatened or uncomfortable. So that's the questions cover that. The masturbation indicator, it's all about privacy, doing it in a sanitary way and doing it in a non-harmful way. We're assessing, do they know that it has to be done in private, ways to not get an infection and not harm themselves. Then the typical standards in adult relationships, that's, there are different kinds of relationships, and relationships usually develop over time. You don't normally have sex with someone that you just met. It's a work up to that. You are friends, and then you might date, and So different types of relationships involve different levels of physical contact or permitted behavior. Then we cover what is consent and what is sex. In the sexual identity, we're just getting people's perceptions or their views related to LGBTQ sexual orientation and identity. These questions are literally, do they know what it's called for two men to be together, two women to be together, that kind of stuff. And then the last one is the risk and the harmful behavior. So we're talking about asking questions about legal issues, about lying, the risks on social media, being exploited, exchanging sex for items or money, that sex leads to pregnancy or could, not always, protective measures to avoid pregnancy, STIs, abstinence, that so on and so forth. So I just put in here, I just wanted to show you one of the indicators from start to finish. So this is indicator 3, and it has to do with self-protection. So we don't read the stuff at the top, but we just know that that's what we're covering in this. So for tier A, I'll just read a few of these. I don't know if everybody can see them. If you were at a store and someone you have never met before smiles at you and says, "It's really nice to meet you," would it be okay to give them a hug? And then they answer yes or no. And then we ask why or why not. So that's, boundaries with strangers. If you are at the mall and somebody you do not know asks for your phone number, what would you do? So you can see that not everyone is exactly sex. It's, how to protect yourself we're assessing for. What is a reason to give out your phone number? And the little writing is just suggested answers so that, they have to give an answer that is acceptable to be considered right. If you were to get a text or a phone call from someone you don't know, and they say they would like to send you a gift card and just need your address, what would you do? So then there's 3 more questions here, then that's the end of tier A. So the private parts of a man's body, private parts of a woman's body, and if someone asks you to take off your clothes and you feel uncomfortable about it, do you have to? And a lot of the clients feel weird saying the actual terms of the anatomy. And that's fine. We've told them they can just point to the area, that they don't have to say it. Some of them pass on those questions because they don't feel comfortable saying it. Some of them feel absolutely comfortable. So here we would determine whether they've met enough of the questions to go on to the next tier. We're going to assume that they have, just so I can show you the rest of the thing. So tier B is 2 questions. So if anybody ever tried to touch your private parts and you didn't want them to, what would you say or do to the person? So this is, we want to know, do they know how to deflect unwanted advances? And then the next one is dealing with who could you tell if something like that ever happened to you? So if they get 1 out of 2 of those right, they're going to get tier C, which has 3 questions. So you're kissing and touching your partner and they ask if they can touch your penis, vagina, and you say yes. When they start, you get uncomfortable. Can you still say no? So we really want to know about that consent piece, that a yes does not mean that you get consent across the board. It's for one action. And then if you want to do something sexual with your partner and your partner doesn't want to, what would you do? And then vice versa. If your partner wanted you to do something and you didn't want to, what would you do? So this is really giving us an idea of, do they know what to do to protect themselves? And so if a person was able to pass all of the tiers, these are the questions they would be exposed to. And then you see the summary section on there. So after it's given, the assessors have to fill that out. And then at the end of each indicator, there's a check-in. So every indicator that we go through, we ask the person if they're ready to continue, if they need a break, if they want to resume another day, or if they want to discontinue altogether. And we also do have visuals that we put out that, so if they, might be flustered and they can't say they need a break, we have visuals on the table in front of them so that they can just point. So like I said, there's the check-ins, and then at the closing script, we just read, thank them for participating, and then just get their feedback about the assessment, if they want to talk about the experience or if they have any questions. It's the only thing we don't do is if they ask questions about like education, this is not a time to give them an education. This is just the assessment. So but if they did ask something, we would tell them, oh, that will be covered in the education piece. So all assessors have been trained on recognizing visual signs of discomfort, ways to manage discomfort, supportive things that you could say, what other services that we could offer if further support is needed. So say someone is, has become upset and they need more. We have a crisis department, MCRT, victim services, counseling, you name it. There's a whole list of things that we can use to support the person. And then we've taught them how to report disclosures of abuse. We're almost to the end, I promise. I know this is long and it's a lot of information. I just wanted to give you as much of the information as I can so that you feel okay about it. So after the assessment, we're going to determine most of the people are only going to be screened for knowledge. If they're not able to finish the whole assessment, they're not going to be consenting. So if they can't pass all of the indicators and all of the tiers to get to the end, we're not even going to be thinking about sexual consent. We're going to be thinking about what do we need to teach them. So for the screening ones, those go to the clinical department and the program development department, and they review the assessments together, and they determine which areas would be beneficial for further education and what materials will be developmentally appropriate. So someone, I'm very familiar with the clients at Keeler. So some of them, may not ever get to the sexual part of it, but, we might be working on saying yes or no to something that you want, or showing a preference in day-to-day stuff if they want to, of what activity they might want to do, or actually saying no to the things that they don't want to do instead of just being compliant and going along with it. Or boundaries, or letting them know that, you can't take your clothes off unless you're in the bathroom or your bedroom. So some of the education will never get to sex unless they're at that level. And then the other time is it's going to be screening for knowledge and consent. Excuse me. So this is the one where you guys are going to convene as a team before. So you're going to convene as a team if we're going to be assessing for consent, and then you're going to look at the results. You're going to think of any additional information that committee might need to know. Whether they've been hospitalized, whether they've had, been taken advantage of before, whether they're easily exploited, whatever, or, that they've been having sex for a long time and they've never had a problem. Whatever it is that we need to share with that team is what you get to talk about. Then the assessments and additional information are presented to the Sexuality Rights and Advocacy Committee. So they're the ones that determine an individual's capacity to give consent. And I'll tell you a little bit more of that committee next. And then if necessary, it's the same thing. After that, we look at what education might they need and what is developmentally appropriate. So the criteria for assessing for consent. This is only these people are going to be actually assessed for consent. So the individual has to be able to take all portions of assessment A and meet at least one of the following criteria. So they have to have indicated that they want to have sex, or they're currently or have already had sex or been sexually active. So other than that, and obviously with assessment B, if they met all of the criteria, but it's not developed yet, so we didn't put that there. And then I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about the committee and what they're made of. So these are the people that are making the decision about the consent. So the whole purpose of them, it's kind of like our Human Rights Committee, is to be unbiased and look at the information. And the only thing that they're deciding is this person capable of giving informed consent? So the committee has at least 3 people. I think we have 7 people. It has to be an odd number of people so that there's actually a vote because we don't want to tie. And then these people have been appointed or nominated by executive leadership. So they're not just anybody. So the voting members could be a nurse. We do have a nurse, a member of behavioral health or crisis department. We have 2 behavioral health and 1 crisis person. A member of the Human Rights Committee. We have one of those. A BCBA, so a behavior analyst. We have one of those. And then a member from the IDD or employment department. We have one of those. So voting members cannot consist of executive leadership, anyone on the sexuality committee, a parent or guardian, or anyone who's a natural support for the individual, because it's extremely hard not to be biased when you know the person so well that you can't ever just look at it from an unbiased perspective. And then a member of the sexuality committee will serve as a non-voting advisor. So they can answer questions about the assessment, they can schedule and run the meetings, and they complete necessary paperwork. So they're kind of the one that's coordinating all of this. And then other people that are present, there'll be 1 representative from the individual's team, and then at least 1 of the assessors, so that if the committee has a question, one of the assessors could answer how that happened. So I'll save you this just because I know we're getting late, but this video is great. There's a lot of sexual self-advocacy videos that are wonderful. And now it's time for questions. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can see your faces. Okay, I can see you now.
All right, do you guys have questions, Kathy?
Early on, in the assessment part, when in the very beginning, you said you have treatment teams. What's a treatment team?
So that's the wording of the law. They're calling it a treatment team. That's a very good question. I don't like the phrase.
I don't either.
It's the because we don't call them that. It's basically the clinical department and the program development department, or people that are on their normal team of deciding. So if the guardian thinks that they really need education in this part, so it factors in input from people on their team. So ultimately, it's a team decision. So one person can't say that they need this, but so we all kind of know, like, they're going to be getting education on these concepts. So that's what.
Yeah, in my experience, obviously, I don't think my son is very interested. Who knows? He could be. But after working at Thompson, I know there's a lot that are.
Yeah.
So it's a mixed bag. The other question I have is, once you go through the assessment, how do you keep them from having sex if you don't feel they're not ready?
So ultimately, people are going to have sex whether they want it. We've had clients that are not, we haven't deemed anybody as consenting yet, and people are still having sex. So where there's a will, there's a way. And it usually happens at the day program because that's the only place that they're allowed, like, that they're together, right? They're in their own, they don't have alone time together in other places. So it's like they seize the moment because that's the only time they're together. Ultimately, we want to be able to give them the education before we, give them the green light. But then we also, are going to be training staff on, what to look for if someone's coming over. Not that they can be there supervising, but also, if it's something suspicious, then we're going to need to wait. Like there, a couple people at Thompson are really wanting to have sex right now. And I've told them, like, guys, just hold on for a little bit longer because we're getting the committee going. So, and they know that this is coming, but,
Gotcha.
so they're trying to be patient, but obviously it might be kind of difficult.
Well, it's a human factor. I mean, it's part of being a human.
Yes.
People are sexual beings, so it will be interesting. So, okay.
Other questions?
Yeah, where's everybody at?
I
So
don't
few
understand
people. So few people are on tonight. I'm surprised.
Oh, I see a Veronica and a Gina that have questions.
Yeah, we've got 13 people on, counting me and Andrea. So that's kind of close to our normal amount.
Veronica, is that someone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm curious. So after the assessment happens, because my son had the assessment, and I was just wondering how that information is then shared to guardians, or like, I know it's pretty early in the whole educational process, and you guys are still trying to formulate that, but how is that shared? Who would be sharing that with a guardian?
So that is the part that we are still working on. We've got the assessment part, and now we're working on the education piece. But essentially, what we're going to do is the same thing. They're going to evaluate it and, you know, give a recommendation of areas that they need education in. So that would be shared with the guardian, the treatment team of these are the things that, that we think they need to develop skills in, or they need more education. And some people, may need a lot of education. So, we're going to pick one or two things to work on.
Okay.
And we haven't really decided how we're doing the classes because I don't want, like 10 people all getting the same information and everybody talking about, like, who wants to talk about sex with 10 other people, and feel comfortable asking a question or so. We really want to be super mindful about the individual preference and how they best receive information. Not to say that we can't have small groups, but we want to group people by ability level, interest level, and stuff. So we won't know that until we do more assessing. But that's our intention, is to have very small groups, sometimes just one person is the group. But yeah, we anticipate just having like a form of, these are the recommendations that we saw as deficit areas that, so.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Gina?
Yeah.
Andrea, so everyone is going to be assessed. Is everyone going to be educated at their level, regardless of where the assessments come out? So some people might be doing a boundary kind of stuff that is very general, has nothing particular to do with sexual relationships.
Correct. So the other thing is we have to do a consent form for the education. So the client could have taken the assessment and then they don't want to take the classes. They can refuse that as well. So they have to consent to both the assessment and the education in order to participate in both. Because if they don't want to take the education, we're not going to make them. But if they want to have sex, they're going to have to pass. So, if they're super motivated to have sex, they're going to want to take the classes so that they get the information. But yeah, not everybody has an interest in learning about this or is capable of learning about it. But yes, it would be very client specific.
Okay, I have a
But-
question. Will I meet with the assessment team before the assessment? Or will I have a chance to talk to them before the assessment? I have a lot of information to share with them before the assessment.
Yes, so before and the assessors give, if you're the legal guardian of the individual, they must reach out to the team for feedback before the assessment is given. So that would be a perfect time for you to share any
Well, the-
information.
The people
that we
doing
need.
the assessment will reach out to what team?
So whoever the queue says, like these are the people, so I don't your loved one, if you're a part of her life or she has a case manager or um if there's a behavior analyst or a nurse that specifically works well with that person, all of those people we're gonna send out an email or a phone call or whatever. I usually call the guardian and then I email the rest of the people at work. But just to get any type of feedback that we need to know, because this is really important. A couple of the people that I um, assessed, I looked through their files and I didn't see anything. But when I talked to the family, someone told me that they had been, sexually assaulted, that they have trauma in their, like, that was very important for me to know before I do.
There's a lot of stuff to know about Kim that is not in her file. And that's why I'm concerned about it, because she's been taken advantage of many different times. All somebody has to do is say, I love you, and she'll do anything. And then afterwards, she's like, well, what, I don't,
Yeah,
well,
so
did you
all
even
of
like
that
this
stuff
person? Well, no.
would be very important to tell the team for feedback because
Yeah.
and even like say um even if she was to go to consenting, like that information will also be told to the people making the decision. So if she is a huge exploitation risk that she's going to do whatever anybody tells her, that's probably an important thing for that team to know, right? Because even if she were to pass the whole assessment, if she can't make an informed decision in the moment, then that would indicate that she can't make an informed decision about sex.
Well,
If
we
she's
know that from previous experience. The other thing is she doesn't like it when people ask her questions, like just the OIG questions. When they come in and ask her questions, she's upset for a week afterwards. And it's just very simple questions that they're asking her. These aren't even personal questions that they're asking. And she is upset for a week
well, and she
because
can tell them, go kick
I'm
rocks.
afraid. I don't know what I'm supposed to answer. Nobody told me. She says at least in school, they tell you what the question is and then you study it and then you know the answer. She says, nobody has told me what the right answer is, so I don't know what to say. And so she's upset about it for a week. So you almost have to have education on how to answer the assessment questions because she doesn't even understand. She's when you talk to her, she sounds like she knows what she's talking about, but she doesn't. She's good at cocktail conversations. She can repeat what she's heard. That's it.
And if she also, like, if she doesn't feel comfortable answering the question, she doesn't have to. Like, if she feels like OIG, you kind of have to because it's an investigation. This isn't an investigation. If she doesn't want to, she can tell us, I don't want to talk about it. And we've had people do that, like many people, or they get 3 questions in and they're done. And that's okay. For her to do. And we too, like, I had one client that was very upset when she first came in. She was like, who's gonna know about this? And like, she just didn't. She thought she was in trouble.
Right.
Um,
That's what my daughter will think, is that she's in trouble.
and as soon as we started, she enjoyed, like, that all faded away because she enjoyed talking to us and she wanted to answer the questions and she didn't even want to take a break by the end. She went through the whole thing without even taking one break. So it really depends on the person, but if we see that your loved one is upset, we're also not going to continue making her answer questions, even if she doesn't say she wants a break.
Well,
So-
she's not going to show you, but the minute she gets out of there, she's going to call me and be crying and want to know, why did she have to do this?
Yeah.
That's what always happens. She's
Yeah,
afraid to do it in front of you because she doesn't want you to think that she's doing something wrong or whatever.
Yeah, she sounds like a people pleaser.
Yes,
Doesn't want
she
to
is, and that's why she's gotten herself into problems.
Yeah. Well, and we will let her know that, you don't have to, you're not going to upset us if you don't do this. It's your choice. You have the right to say no. So hopefully all of that, and, knowing that she does, I mean, we can even have someone talk to her specifically ahead of time about that. So that she's hearing it more than once, not just at the assessment.
Okay, so somebody will be contacting me before the assessment. That's how I'll find out about it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Sue?
Oh, I think you're on mute. You're off of mute, but we can't hear you.
I don't know why.
Yeah, that's weird.
Well, she's getting that sorted out, Andrea. Are the assessors matched by gender to the individual, or are there cross-gender assignments?
There are cross-gender assignments, just because we don't have a lot of males.
Mhm.
But if we are assessing a male and they have a preference, then because the other thing I forgot to say is, the first round we didn't do this because it was a pilot. But what we want to do is we took pictures of everybody that got assessed, and we want to let the client at least pick one of the people that's assessing them so that they have a choice of who they feel comfortable with. Sorry, I forgot to say that. So that if they want a female and they're a male, they can have that, or vice versa.
Thanks.
Sue, did you figure it out, or can you type in the chat?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, we can hear
Okay,
you.
all right.
Good.
So I'm piggybacking a little bit on what Jim's previous question was. So the assessment is we're informed of the assessment. The assessment occurs after the assessment is the consent, correct? Or are they kind of hand in hand?
The consent to take the assessment or the consent for the education? There's two different ones.
Okay, so it's kind of consent, if yes, assessment, and then another consent.
Yes, and then if
For
yes,
education.
education.
Okay, I guess my two-part question maybe. What if yes, assessment, that's great. You ascertain in our case that he knows very, very little. And he says no, he doesn't want to go through the education part. Yet he continues to act as though he needs education in the different areas. So I guess part of my question is, it's individual, but it's also, if clients have declined the education piece, will they get any of this? Like Jim was saying, those general boundary things, is that going to continue through circles or some other way, or is it this way or no way?
That's a good question. So I think there's not a real specific answer, but what comes to mind for me is, I would think they don't have to take the education, but when you guys meet as a team, if there are things that, the team feels that he needs to have to work on, that could obviously be an outcome that's still worked on, and we go that route, right? Of, not that he has to sit in a class and take this class, but also, if he's working on boundaries, then he might get the same information, but it would just be through a goal if, you think that he needs it. Right.
Okay.
But it's not going to be something, obviously, even when we have an outcome, if the person refuses to participate, we can't make them. We can certainly try to, encourage, but if
Mhm.
it's, I mean, but,
Okay.
they're definitely two different things. So I think you're right to, if they need the education and they don't want it, like what other ways can we help that person develop that skill?
Right. Yeah,
I,
that's what I'm thinking, because my son will refuse things that he are good for him or are best for him or
yeah,
whatever, and I don't want him just, to be kind of hung out. Not for that to happen to him, but I don't want him continue to do things that the education could help with, but he says no, and it's like, that's the story of my life. All right, I just wanted to check on that.
yeah, that's a great question. Any other questions? And obviously, if you do have more questions in the future, this is a lot to take in at one time. And we have more information. I just wanted to give you as much as I could in one sitting. Um, so if you do have questions, you can always reach out to me or Stephanie Norwood. We also have other people on the committee that could answer these questions. But we're the best people. Stephanie and I are the two people that know the most about this topic as of now. Some of the people that were just trained, I don't know if I would necessarily, they need to give it a few more times in order to, be able to speak to it.
And did you say at some point the DSPs will kind of be roped into this on some
So
level?
that's a good question too, because so anybody with the assessment or the education, if they are unable to remain biased or they don't feel comfortable doing that, we're not going to make them, because they would be the wrong people to teach someone something if they don't agree with it. Um, so we are not forcing anybody, but a lot of the times the DSPs are the ones that have the best rapport with the client.
Right.
Um, so because they work directly with them. So it's going to depend like what staff are interested in that, who the client really resonates with, if they're willing to attend a class with someone that they don't know, all those things. But yes, we will have some DSPs because they're natural teachers of things with our clients. But it might not always be a DSP.
Right. No, I guess I'm thinking more in terms of, yes, things like boundaries, what have you, to be carried through in the house. And I hear what you're saying. Most of the conjugal it would be at day program. Nonetheless, some of the things would be in effect at the house as well.
Mhm.
If someone um chooses to have a same-sex relationship, then that's something that has to be considered as well within the house on off CDS hours. So that's why I'm
Yeah.
like,
We are
uh,
also we're not planning on just having classes at CDS. There might be a few, but we're not just, putting everybody through the same sex class,
right,
sex ed class. So
right,
my hope is that quite a bit of this will be taught by people in the residential because they have a lot of time with them where they can just give them a
right.
little snippet here, a snippet there, um, in the moment, not
Well, right.
just
And to
lecturing.
follow through with whatever the clients may have heard elsewhere, terminology and expectations and things like that, in the house as well as at CDS.
Yeah, great point. Laura, you're on mute.
Thank you. This will be posted. Usually we have it by about midday on the website. We'll also have the slides, right, that Andrea had that'll be posted along with the recording. And this is, the beginning of conversations, or I guess it's not the beginning. We talked before, it's the middle or the still fairly early, right, in conversations on rolling this out. I think it's amazing when you look at the amount of structure and work that has gone into it so far. That is very thoughtful and precise, and really considering the needs of all the people that we serve. So kudos to the Sexuality Committee and the work that they have done so far, and to the people who have been willing to be the pilots and such of the assessment. Thank you to those people. And remember to check out the page and to get signed up for the text. And remember, as soon as we get off of here, I'm going to send an updated meeting invite for our next meeting in August, because that will be our picnic for the year. That will be August 22nd. We'll meet at 6 p.m. Dinner will be provided. We'll be here in person at the AID Administrative Office at 309 New Indian Trail Court. And I will send that. I've got it ready to go, but I didn't want to confuse anybody about tonight's meeting. So I thought I better wait until after this. So again, the picnic will be Thursday, August 22nd. 6 p.m. here. We'll have VPs and AVPs here. Feel free to bring your loved ones if you like, and yourselves, right? And we will celebrate summer, and I will bet dollars to donuts we won't have as nice a night as tonight. It'll probably be super hot. But that's the weather, right? In Illinois. So thanks everybody very, very much. Appreciate.
One final thing, if I
Yes,
can
go
get
ahead.
in here. Andrea, could you give everyone remind us of your email, just so people can contact you if they've got follow-up questions?
Sure. Do you want me to just spell it?
Sure.
It's it's A Consolati. So ACONS. Oh, Lori just put it in the chat. Thanks. SOLATTI at aidcares.org. And I just want to tell you guys one more thing. I gave the assessments to a lot of people that I didn't know very well. And let me tell you that by the end of the assessment, I really felt like I had such a great knowledge of the person. And even the people that have been their case managers forever, right? After they gave the assessment, they learned things about the client that they never knew, even having been with them 10 years. Like it's a really cool way to get to know the person. And it was, a lot of the clients are really liking it more than I ever thought would. So it's really encouraging. And we have not had anybody have like a negative reaction yet. Not to say that we won't, but it's been really, it's kind of heartwarming. And then, for them to understand that it's safe to talk about these things with people, or, the right people. I have one client that I must be the sex expert, because anytime he's got a question, he comes to my office to ask me. And I think that it's wonderful that he has a spot where he feels comfortable asking those questions, and that he feels safe and that it's okay. It's not taboo, or, that's how you learn. So, I don't always have the answers, or, but it's great that clients are, because at first a lot of them think I can't talk about this, and they're really starting, even from the beginning of the assessment to the end, what they're willing to say or talk about is, very different, so they just, I think it's great that they're starting to have an outlet to ask questions instead of not asking and then doing things that could harm them. So, and the staff have really been, the assessors, like, very open and comfortable with this. We've only had 2 people that have not wanted to take part in the assessment process. We have people like asking, can I be on the committee? And we're like, we have enough. But we'll keep you in mind for the education. So I'm really encouraged by the positivity around this and just the excitement to, you know, help the clients, you know, express that part of themselves in a way that's safe. So it's a special project to me, and I feel very wonderful about it.
Well, I think they probably feel seen and being treated like adults,
Mhm.
which they are.
Yeah.
So,
Right, right.
all right.
It's not easy for any of us. I always say, none of us want to think about our children having sex, and none of our children want to think about us having sex. So it's a equal, you know, it's a equal partnership there, or equal thought process. But it is good. And I think about, even as myself, as a person without a disability, growing up, the things that you were taught or not taught, right? About how things really work, have led to many a person without a disability getting taken advantage of as well. So it is important to be able to be open and honest, and I appreciate everybody here today. I appreciate Andrea especially, and hope that you all have a good night, and that we see you on August 22nd at 6 p.m. for the picnic.
Okay.
Yes.
Bye.
Thanks again, Andrea.
Yeah, no
Thank you,
problem.
Lori.
Bye,
Bye, guys.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank
Yep.
you very much.
No problem.